I guess as an architect, my education is quite an experience because you really have to search for it, look for it, go after it. I decided to contact somebody who I admire, and I wrote about his work, who was Amancio Williams, a very enigmatic architect from Argentina. He invited me to sort of apprentice with him. So I entered to work with him, being one-on-one. And one day he took me to his library in the living room, and he spoke with me for a couple of hours. It was a Friday. Saying how important it was what we were doing and the responsibility I had to continue doing it and carrying it over. And for he always spoke with big words, for not only for architecture but for humanity. I mean, it was like an amazing speech, and I was like, wow, why was that? And till next day when I learned that he died. In a way, he was kind of giving me that responsibility to push it forward, and that's what I did. So, but then I took on this other experience, studying and meeting with Enrique Miralles in Frankfurt, and later on working with him in his office in Barcelona. I actually was almost going to study art or psychology, and until I went to a presentation of an architect at that time, talked about building the grave for his father. And the way he described that experience, for me, put together art and psychology in architecture. For me, architecture is that kind of service to the people, as exceeding the individual, but involving the individual. People deserve their own architecture. We read buildings, we draw buildings, pass on our experience in a very systematic way. It's about getting deep. It's very much about learning as much as you can from a certain corpus, trying to develop a relationship with the object, with the site, with the people, and trying to find a key, a key to open a door to the problem. And there is no one key. There are hundreds of keys that you could find in the way, and you sometimes, at some point, decide to open one. Whichever you took, it needs to go deep. You construct the solution at all levels. More of that and more of that, and developing more relationships and bringing more materials into it and making reflections back and forth that allows you to feel in very close proximity to the problem and the object you are dealing with. For me, in architecture, it's always a collective process. He said, you don't know how to build this, you talk to a contractor and they will give you some ideas. If you don't know what you drew, what you just drew it, give it to somebody else to redraw it, and maybe something comes up. Or take an object that interests you and redraw it, because the experience of passing through that object will reveal something. So Peter Zumthor comes to me almost by chance, but I really don't have any close proximity to it, even though I believe I totally follow his understanding of architecture. I always remember one answer that James Stirling gave to one student once he was asked what's the most difficult part of architecture. He was always very ironic as a good Englishman, and he said the most difficult part of architecture is to find the client. You have to constantly remind yourself what you wanted and somehow stay on track, even though life will take you here and there all the time, and that's super fine. It's beautiful.